Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
So I need to tell you about this crazy situation that happened to me about 8 years ago. At the time, I was a single mom trying to juggle college classes and work to make ends meet. I had this old car that was basically dying on me. The engine light was permanently on, the air conditioning needed work, and something was wrong with the fuel pump. I couldn't afford to fix it, and I really needed the money, so I decided to sell it. I worked as a school crossing guard through the local police department because it gave me the flexible schedule I needed for my college classes. The hours were weird, sometimes I'll be working swing shifts or even overnight hours depending on my class schedule. That's why when I posted the car for sale on our local sales website, I made sure to include in the ad that people should only text me since I might not be able to take phone calls. The ad was straightforward. I posted a few pictures showing the car's condition, listed it for $1,000, and was honest about all the problems. I even included the repair estimate I'd gotten from my trusted mechanic so people knew what they were getting into. A few days after posting, I got what seemed like a normal text from someone who said his name was Matt. He asked if the car was still available, and I told him it was. We went back and forth with the usual questions about price, why the engine light was on, and details about the repair quote. Everything seemed fine at first. Then the next day I got this text from him that completely caught me off guard. He demanded to know whether I was going to take all my stuff out of the car before selling it to him or if that was going to be his job. The hostility in that message was so unwarranted. I mean, we're talking about 3 textbooks and a gym bag with some clothes in it. 4 items total. And he was acting like I'd already agreed to sell him the car, which I definitely hadn't. I had other people interested too, and some were already setting up test drives. I decided I didn't need his attitude, especially since he wasn't even offering full price. So I texted him back and told him I wasn't selling the car to him, so he didn't need to worry about it. This guy did not know how to take no for an answer. He started calling and texting constantly, complaining about everything he could think of. He complained that the paint was peeling, which was true and clearly shown in the photos. He complained about me asking $1,000 for what he called a piece of junk. I kept telling him the same thing over and over, that he wasn't getting the car, that I had other interested buyers, and that he didn't need to worry about it. But he wouldn't stop. Then things took a really dark turn. See, the sales website had this feature where you could link it to your Facebook account so your posts would show up in both places. I'd done that to get more visibility. This was back when Facebook was newer, and I actually trusted their privacy settings. I had no idea this psycho would be able to use that connection to find my personal information. Somehow, he managed to get my full name, figure out where I lived, and started going through my Facebook profile. He found pictures of my 7-year-old son, my mother-in-law's obituary, personal family photos, everything. Then he started using all of that against me. The texts got really nasty really fast. He started saying things about how I should be ashamed for saying no to him since he was this muscular guy and I was just some fat woman. He even sent me a picture of himself, and let me tell you, he looked like a beanpole with maybe 2 visible AB muscles. Not exactly the intimidating figure he claimed to be. Then he started getting really personal and disgusting. He asked me if I even knew anything about cars, or if I had written that post when I was on my period. He told me I should be lucky I was already married, or he would come to my house and show me how a real man handles a difficult woman. I was getting scared at this point, but thankfully he only had a general area of where I lived, not my exact address. The way GPS works in my apartment complex, he never would have found me even if he tried. For a while, I was hoping this would just fizzle out on its own. I had turned my phone off during classes to avoid distractions, so I'd often come out to find hours worth of these horrible messages waiting for me. I hadn't blocked him yet because part of me thought maybe he'd just give up and move on. 2 weeks later, I had to go into the police station to sign my time card for the crossing guard job. I was sitting in the lobby waiting my turn when I decided to check my phone. What I saw made my blood boil. This sick freak had started targeting my son. He was sending messages about photos I posted of my little boy. He said my kid was just as ugly as I was and that he hoped I didn't plan on him leaving home to get a wife anytime soon. There was one photo from our day at the zoo where my son had some dirt on his face from playing, and this monster was claiming it looked like I was beating my child. I completely lost it and yelled out loud that this was absolutely not happening. I guess I said it pretty loud because my boss immediately came over and asked what was wrong. She was this amazing woman who I really respected. I explained that I was getting these abusive texts from some random guy who had tried to buy my car. She told me not to delete those messages yet and asked to see my phone. I'm so glad I listened to her. She took my phone and started reading through all the horrible things he'd sent me. When she finished, she told me to wait until the lobby cleared out, then asked me to follow her behind the security doors into the police station itself. I had no idea what was happening, but I trusted her completely. She led me back to her office and started working on her computer while occasionally looking at my phone. She asked if I had more than just his phone number, and I showed her the text where he'd given me his first name. She worked for what felt like forever, then handed my phone back to me. That's when she told me something I hadn't known. She wasn't just an administrator. She was actually a lieutenant who had worked her way up from patrol. Before her current position, she'd spent years investigating child, elder, and disabled abuse cases. When someone threatened harm to kids, she took it very seriously. Using the name and phone number from the texts, she'd been able to figure out exactly who this guy was. She told me not to delete or respond to any more messages and that if things got worse, I should call her or emergency services immediately. I left feeling relieved that someone was handling the situation. I went to class and honestly kind of forgot about the whole thing, especially after I sold the car to someone else for the full asking price a few days later. 2 weeks later, when I came back to sign my next time card, I had a bunch of unread messages from the guy that I've been filtering so I wouldn't see them. My boss asked me to wait again and brought me back to her office. She had some paperwork for me to sign related to what had happened. She told me she could explain more about what had been going on after I signed the complaint form. So I signed it, and what she told me next was absolutely incredible. The phone number had been tied to several people because it was from one of those cheap cell service providers that people use when they're desperate. But with his first name, she'd been able to identify him completely. Once she had his driver's license information and address, she started digging deeper. It turned out this guy had 5 kids with 4 different women, and he owed back child support to all of them. He hadn't paid a dime in over 10 years, and the total was somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000. But somehow, just 2 weeks before our whole situation started, he'd bought himself some fancy vintage car, the kind you see at car shows with massive insurance premiums. Being that far behind on child support meant my boss could place a seizure order on his new car so it could be sold to pay what he owed. One of his baby mamas lived in a state where dodging child support could get you arrested on a felony warrant. When my boss called them to see if they wanted the warrant executed, they told her they absolutely wanted it done as fast as possible. But it got even better. During her investigation, she discovered he was using his brother's social security number on his job applications to avoid having his wages garnished for child support. This is completely illegal, so she contacted his employer's human resources department to let them know. They told her he'd be fired immediately for submitting fraudulent documents. Then came the best part. About 4 days before I came in to sign that complaint, she'd had him arrested on felony child abandonment charges. The state that wanted him was already on their way to pick him up. He was looking at 8 to 12 years in prison, and he still had to pay all that back child support. My boss explained that if he had just stopped when I first said no, he wouldn't be sitting in jail right now. I could have maybe dealt with him being rude about the car. I could have even handled him not taking no for an answer and the cyber stalking to some degree. But the moment he brought my child into his sick games, he crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed, ever. The crazy part is, if he'd just accepted my first rejection and moved on with his life, none of this would have happened. He'd still be driving his fancy car, still be working his job, and still be free. Instead, his entitled attitude and refusal to accept rejection led to him losing everything and spending the next decade behind bars. Some people really don't know when to quit. I've been working at fast food restaurants for about 2 years when this happened. Started at one place in my hometown for 6 months before heading off to university. Then got a job at another location in my college town. Same company, different systems. Had to quit one and reapply at the other since they couldn't just transfer me between locations. The first place was strict but fair. I was good with customers, so they always put me on register duty. I could handle any difficult customer with just the right amount of fake politeness and humor to win them over. The managers there trusted us with their swipe cards so we could handle refunds and order changes quickly without having to call them over every time. Everything went smoothly for months. I'd clock in, count the money in my register, work my shift, count the money again at the end, and head home. My drawer was almost always perfect to the penny. Then one day, I noticed another worker using my register during my break. When I counted the money that night, I was short about $5. Management gave me a disciplinary form called a cash retainer, basically a pop quiz about proper money handling procedures. After I completed it, I told the manager about the other worker using my register. He explained it was my fault for not supervising my register constantly and for not locking it during my break. I didn't even know I could lock it. He showed me how and even pulled out the company manual that clearly stated employees cannot leave their register from initial count to final count unless it's locked. Fair enough, I could follow that rule. Fast forward a year later at the new location. I picked up an extra shift from a co-worker because I needed the money to buy groceries. The manager scheduled that night had never put me on register before, which was weird since I was known for being good with customers and hated working in the kitchen. She had already prepared the register money for the other worker, so I took it from her, counted it, signed off on it, and got to work. This manager was something else. She worked everyone hard while she stood around picking her nails and scrolling through her phone. After a while, we hit a slow period with no customers, so I just stood at my register waiting. The manager snapped at me to stop standing around and do my job. I told her I was already doing my job, but there were no customers to serve. She ordered me to go get stock for the kitchen. I asked her what happened to doing my job and she insisted that was my job. I asked if she wanted me to do it by the book and she said yes. I told her no problem, I'd stay by the register like it said in the manual. She got angry but left me alone. I spent the next hour getting paid to chat with customers and co-workers who came by the register area. Eventually she told me to take my break, so I locked the register and went to the break room. One of my co-workers who worked at a flexible register next to mine told me something interesting when I got back. She said while I was on break, the manager had come to my register, angrily tapped the screen trying to get it to work, and walked off when nothing happened. When I returned from break, I asked for her manager card to unlock the register. She refused, saying it was for managers only and I was just a register worker that day. I asked if this meant I was on an extended break then. She said no and told me to go do my job. I explained that I could do my job if she gave me the manager card to unlock the register and that she could supervise since it was her card. She rolled her eyes, walked to the register with me, and held out her card. She wouldn't let go of it, so I had to swipe it while she was still gripping it. The screen came back to life and I unlocked it. She avoided me for the rest of the shift while I had a relaxed time since it wasn't busy. I got to have proper conversations with customers and even had a friend who'd been drinking come in for a milkshake. We chatted for a while and I told her about the weird manager. At the end of my shift, the manager suddenly became very nice and sweet. She offered to count my register money for me so I could leave early. I declined, explaining that I was paid by the minute and wanted to protect myself, so I'd count it myself. I was 3 cents over, probably from not giving some customers their penny change when they walked away quickly. For a disciplinary action, the drawer had to be off by more than $1, so I was fine. I felt satisfied walking home that night. I'd done everything by the book and managed to annoy a manager who was clearly trying to abuse her power. I'd taken away her ability to slack off for one shift, and I even had a friend to walk home with. But there was more to the story that I found out later. That Thursday evening turned out to be the most profitable in months, hundreds of dollars more than usual. Management launched an investigation because of the unusual numbers. They noticed it was also the first Thursday evening in months where the register wasn't perfect to the penny. They saw that I had signed off on the money instead of the regular worker. Then they noticed that the usual worker's signature on other shifts didn't match her real signature. Way too many coincidences. Security cameras revealed everything. The manager had been taking money from the register to the office during the regular workers' break every shift. I had accidentally prevented her from stealing that night just by following the rules and doing my job properly. She was fired immediately and had to pay fines. I heard she even spent some time in jail. Now I see her mopping floors at the fried chicken place across the street. I probably would have trusted her to watch my register while I got stock from the back if she hadn't been so rude and demanding about it. Her attitude is what made me stick to the rules so strictly, and that's exactly what caught her in the act. I look younger than my age. It's been both a blessing and a curse throughout my life. In high school, teachers would question if I belonged in advanced classes. In college, professors would double-check my ID when I tried to present my research. By the time I graduated with my master's degree at 23, I'd gotten used to the constant surprise on people's faces when they learned my actual age and accomplishments. My fiancé and I had been together since our sophomore year of college. We both worked hard through school, saved every penny we could, and by 2018, we finally had enough for a down payment on our first house. It wasn't much to look at, a small two-bedroom that needed work in pretty much every room. The kitchen cabinets were falling apart, the bathroom needed a complete overhaul, and don't even get me started on the basement that flooded every time it rained hard. But it was ours, and we were proud of it. The neighborhood was quiet, mostly older residents who'd lived there for decades. We didn't really know any of our neighbors yet, just exchanged polite waves when we saw each other outside. I worked from home while my fiancé had a job at a local engineering firm. Most days I was the only one home during regular hours, which meant I handled most of the outdoor maintenance. When winter hit that first year, I quickly learned that home ownership meant a lot more responsibility than renting an apartment. The first big snowfall came in January, and I bundled up to tackle our driveway and walkway. I threw on my warmest clothes, thick fleece pajama pants covered in snowflakes that my little sister had given me for Christmas, my favorite winter boots, and this incredibly warm hat my aunt had knitted for me. It had ear flaps and looked like something straight out of a Disney movie, but it kept my head toasty. I was about halfway through shoveling when I heard a car slow down behind me. I turned around to see an older woman in a dark sedan pulling over to the curb. She rolled down her window and gave me what I thought was a friendly smile. She introduced herself as my neighbor from the blue house across the street and asked how I was liking the neighborhood so far. I told her we really loved it and that everyone seemed nice and quiet. I mentioned the house needed a lot of work, but we were excited about fixing it up. She said that was wonderful and told me she had a granddaughter about my age. The woman explained that her granddaughter was in 7th grade at the middle school downtown and had a winter concert that night. She asked if I knew her granddaughter, thinking we might be friends since we probably went to the same school. I felt that familiar sinking feeling in my stomach. Here we go again. I straightened up from my shoveling and looked at her directly, explaining that I thought there might be some confusion. I told her I lived there with my fiancé and that we had bought the house together last year. She said that was nice that my parents let my boyfriend visit so much. I corrected her, saying that we owned the house together and that I was 24 years old. Her smile faltered a bit, but she pressed on. She told me I didn't need to make up stories and asked if my parents were home because she'd love to introduce herself to the adults in the household. Now I was getting annoyed. I set down my shovel and crossed my arms, telling her I had graduated from college with my master's degree just last year. I explained that I worked as a graphic designer and my fiancé was an engineer and that we were the adults in this household. She said she didn't appreciate being lied to and that I was clearly a child. She didn't understand why I was making up these elaborate stories. I asked if she'd like to see my driver's license, my diploma, or the deed to the house with both our names on it. Karen was getting red in the face now, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. She said this was ridiculous and asked what kind of parents let their middle schooler shovel snow alone. She told me I should be ashamed of myself for making up stories about owning a house. I told her I really didn't know what else to say since I was an adult homeowner trying to clear my own driveway. She told me not to take that tone with her and said she was going to have a word with my parents about my attitude and my lying. I sarcastically wished her good luck with that since my parents lived 3 states away and had nothing to do with this property. That's when she really lost it. She said I was the most disrespectful child she'd ever encountered and ranted about me making up stories about being engaged and having a job. She complained that children these days had no respect for their elders. My fiancé's car pulled into the driveway right at that moment. Perfect timing. He got out and walked over, clearly confused by the scene in front of him. He asked if everything was okay. Karen's eyes got wide when she looked between us. I told him this was my fiancé and explained that we lived there together and owned the house together. She stammered that I was just a child. My fiancé told her I was 24 with a master's degree and asked who she was. I could see the realization slowly dawning on her face. Her confident, condescending expression crumbled when she understood just how wrong she'd been. She stammered that she thought I looked so young. I agreed that I got that a lot, but explained that looking young didn't make me a liar or disrespectful. It just made me someone who looks young. She sat there for another few seconds, her face getting redder by the minute. Finally, she mumbled something that might have been an apology and drove off without another word. My fiancé looked at me with raised eyebrows and asked what that was about. I explained that she thought I was in middle school and accused me of lying when I told her I lived there. He said seriously and pointed out that even if I were in middle school, what business would that be of hers? He had a point. Even her initial assumption was weird and intrusive. We never spoke again after that day. I'd see her occasionally when I was outside, but she'd quickly look away and hurry back into her house. No more friendly waves or attempts at conversation. She made it clear what she thought of the disrespectful child living across the street. Last year she passed away, and her adult children have been cleaning out her house ever since. Every few weeks, there's a new pile of stuff on the curb for trash pickup. Just yesterday I saw them hauling out boxes of old Christmas decorations and vintage furniture. It got me thinking about that whole encounter again. I still don't understand why she was so determined to believe I was lying instead of just accepting that she'd made a mistake. And even if I had been a kid, her behavior was still completely inappropriate. You don't accuse children of being liars just because they don't fit your assumptions. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.